Chapter 3. Kinds of Zikr. It is one of the essential duties of the true mu'mins that they should learn some examples of the different kinds of the Zikri Ilahi, so that they may benefit from them religiously and spiritually, according to the requirements of the time and the place. For it is a natural law that nothing in religion nor in the world can prove to be beneficial and profitable until it has been completely understood and known. Therefore, it is necessary to know that zikr is of various kinds taken from different considerations. Thus we are going to discuss some of the more important kinds of zikr in the following. Zikr fard, individual remembrance. Zikr jama'at, collective remembrance. Zikr jali, open remembrance. Zikr khafi, hidden remembrance. Zikr kathir, abundant remembrance. Zikr qalil, little remembrance. Zikr lisani, oral remembrance. Zikr qalbi, cardiacal remembrance. Zikr basari, visual remembrance. And Zikr khab, visionary or dream state remembrance. Proof of the kinds of zikr. If we ponder on the following verse, we will find clear examples of the above kinds of zikr therein. As it is said, then remember, uzkuru, Allah as ye remember your fathers, or with a more lively remembrance. Surah 2, Ayat 200. Thus, from this verse we find the example of the individual remembrance, for any individual can remember his father, and the same proves to be the example of Zikri Jama'at, collective remembrance. For the sons of a person can gather together and remember their ancestors. Further, this also alludes to the Zikri Jali, open remembrance. For a person can recite the eulogy of his ancestors in the form of modulation, and the same is a proof of Zikri Khafi, hidden remembrance. For a person can remember his ancestors secretly. Furthermore, the examples of the Zikri Kathir, abundant remembrance, and Zikri Qalil, little remembrance, can also be quite clearly found, for a person remembers his forefathers often or rarely. Zikri Lisani, oral remembrance, and Zikri Qalbi, cardiacal remembrance, are related to the Zikri Jali, open remembrance, and Zikri Khafi, hidden remembrance, respectively. The proof of Zikri Basari, visual remembrance, in this example, is that a son looks at his father and his personal possessions with love and affection, or with yearning in the hope of seeing him. The proof of auditory remembrance, in this example, is that every individual listens to the praise and mention of his forefathers eagerly. The example of the physical or bodily remembrance is that when it is necessary for someone to go to his father, he moves physically and takes pains to reach to him. The example of the Zikri Khab, visionary remembrance, is that every kind-hearted person dreams of his father, which strengthens further the love for and remembrance of his father. Zikr fard. This means the remembrance of a person whether he is in a group or alone, when he remembers according to his own desire freely, without feeling restricted by the group rules and without their accompaniment. Zikr fard of the Zakir, rememberer, is beneficial and profitable everywhere and at all times, but one should not choose it in preference to Zikr Jama'at, for the grace of Zikr Jama'at is far greater. Zikr Jama'at. The form of Zikr Jama'at is that it is based on a majlis, assembly or gathering, of more than one mu'min, in which they perform the zikr with one voice. If all the conditions and rules or etiquettes pertaining to the majlisi zikr, assembly of remembrance, are fulfilled, then there are more chances and possibilities of spiritual progress than the other ways of zikr or ibadat, remembrance and devotion. The wisdom in this is that zikr of this kind is the luminous rope, nurani rasi, of God, and man has been ordered to hold to it firmly in collectivity. Zikr Jali. This kind of zikr is called that remembrance which is performed by one or more people with an effective voice. The need for such a remembrance is that the human heart becomes rusty and dark very quickly, and in such a heart, zikr khafi does not descend until it has completely been cleaned through zikr jali and weeping and crying. It should be kept in mind that any part from the parts of divine worship, when it is recited with a loud and effective voice, is called zikr jali, such as the recitation of Subhan Allah by a group. In other words, any worship which is performed loudly is called zikr jali. Zikr khafi. The purpose of zikr khafi is to perform zikr hiddenly and secretly. This is very close to zikr qalbi. The benefit of this zikr is that there is no show of darweshi therein, nor can people spread rumors about the zakir, rememberer. Further, one other benefit of this zikr is that it gradually descends to the heart and takes the form of zikr qalbi. Zikr kathir. This means to remember God abundantly, whether it is in the form of different azkar ibadat, remembrances and worships, or one zikr, by intervals or continuously, open or hidden. It will be regarded as zikr kathir when as a whole it is performed in abundance. In this connection, it is essential to know that in the Holy Quran, not only in one verse, but rather in numerous verses, it has been ordered to do abundant zikr. Therefore, it is necessary for and incumbent upon the mu'min to devote himself to the zikr ilahi and good works increasingly. For there are two opposing controlling powers in the heart of man. One is the power of good, and the other is the power of evil. Therefore, so long as the mu'min properly continues remembering God, the authority of evil comes to an end, and good is set free to exercise its authority. On the contrary, when man forgets God, the ability of good is suppressed, and the power of evil is raised. Thus, if it is desired to remain safe from the roots of all evils of Satan and the carnal soul, then the only remedy is zikr kathir. Zikr qalil. This means to do very little zikr. If this is only due to laziness, then this is not a good sign, for the Quran disparages laziness and idleness. If there is any other reason, and zikr is certain to increase hereafter, then it does not matter. Zikri lisani. This means any one zikr in which the tongue is moved, whether the voice is high or low. The benefit of this zikr is that not only does the heart of the zakir attend to and wait for the true love, but also awakens the sleeping hearts of others from the deep sleep or the sleep of negligence. Why not, while God has given the tongue, to remember Him thereby as much as possible? Zikri qalbi. This means the zikr of heart. This is the most special zikr among the azkar, remembrances, and is the bearer of the wonders and marvels of spiritualism. But as much it is special, miraculous, and full of wisdom, so much is this kind of zikr delicate and difficult. This is the reason for which it is aided by all other azkaru ibadat, remembrances and worships, and good deeds, in order that it may progress. It has innumerable benefits, and the basic and most essential benefit is that through its regular and constant practice, the tongue of the heart is opened, as a result of which the door of spiritualism remains open forever. Zikri basari. This is the zikr of the eye of a mu'min. This can be done in various manners. For instance, through keeping an attractive written form of one of the great names of God, with the purpose that this blessed name may engrave itself upon the heart through the practice of regularly and constantly looking at it with fixed eyes. Or through conceiving any such name directly, or studying the Quran and religious books of the first category. Also studying the signs of the universe in search for the truth is included in Zikri Basari. Zikri Sam'i, auditory remembrance. This zikr relates to the ear. For instance, if someone is doing zikr and another one is listening to him eagerly, then both are doing zikr. The zikr of the former is oral, and the zikr of the latter is auditory. Further, if a mu'min is reading the Quran with a beautiful recitation, or praises God in poetry or prose, then this soul-nourishing voice stands for Zikri Sam'i, for a person or people who listen to it with attention and absorption. Zikri Badani, physical remembrance. This zikr is related to the body. It is also of several kinds, but suffice to say that in any kind of zikr and any type of worship, whatever trouble and whatever pains have to be taken, are taken only by the body. Particularly, whatever profitable religious service which is the spirit for the progress of zikr is performed for the community and jama'at, is accomplished through the potentialities of the body. This service is the spirit for the progress of zikr, provided it is not for the fulfillment of worldly purposes, but is purely with the intention of seeking the pleasure of God. Zikri khab. Sometimes a mu'min sees such a nice dream that therein he is doing zikro ibadat. Now we have to examine what his condition is during such worship, to ascertain whether he is correctly fulfilling his zikr or not. Thus, if in the state of the dream he does zikr for a certain time continuously and also feels pleasure, then there are glad tidings for his spiritual progress. Contrary to this, If he faces difficulty in the zikr, in the dream, and discontinues the chain of zikr, then it should be understood that in matter of zikr he is still weak. Chapter 4. The General Conditions of Zikr. For the execution and completion of the general conditions of zikr, the dervish, in accordance with the clear and exoteric teachings and guidance of Islam and Iman, submission and true faith, must adorn himself with good manners and with the attributes of righteousness. All this can be done only in the form of good intentions, words, and deed. Thus, in this chapter, regarding this, we will discuss some important matters. Source of goodness. It should be known that in the personal case, the source of goodness is first of all intention, then word or speech, and finally action. Thus, through these three sources, any one good which is within the limits of the principles of religion, and which is exactly in accordance with the spirit of Islam and wisdom of religion, whose purpose and purport is to perform the rights of God and the rights of servants, and the seeking of God's pleasure, which can avail strength to religion and faith, splendor to knowledge, peace to the heart, and comfort to the soul, can be achieved. It is not only the ground of the moral elevation of an individual, but also the means of respect, luster, progress, and prosperity, which is called good intention, good word, and good deed, and the same is called faith and right action, imanu amali salih, and righteousness, taqwa, justice and favor, adlo ihsan, and therein is the welfare and success of this world and the world of religion. Therefore the Bandahi Zakir of God should always stick to goodness, the source of which is intention, word, and action. Word and work. If you wish to go into the details of religion, then you have to take into consideration many things. But if you want to define religion succinctly, then it can be epitomized into two words, word and work. That is to say, that the name of pure words and good deeds is religion, as is said in the Quran, unto him ascends good word, and the good deed raises it up, elevates it. Surah 35, Ayat 1. The word here includes dogma, faith, worship, remembrance, and knowledge, and whatever the word may be, it cannot reach the presence of God without good deed. This means that the remembering mu'min-i-zakir, should, in addition to the remembrance, also necessarily perform good deeds, so that he may achieve the proximity and nearness of the holy light of God. There are numerous verses in the Quran which prove that all the ordinances, ahkam, of the religion of Islam are comprehended and confined within word and work, and that nothing is excluded from word and work. Intention, after all, is nothing but the name of the volition of the heart, which is related to both. That is to say, that in good word and good deed the intention, i.e. volition of heart, is already included, as it is said, "Who is better in speech than one who calls men to God and does good deed, and says, Lo, I am of those who surrender unto him." Surah 41, Ayat 33. Here call to God comprises all the matters of religion, for in all the words of Islam, there is nothing which does not have an aspect of calling or inviting to God, directly or indirectly. Similarly, in good deed, there is mention of all the deeds taught by religion. In short, religion is the sum total of two important things, word and work. Thus, remembrance is a calling to God, da'wat, not only in the sense that God is called upon, invoked, therein, but also in the sense that man calls his own soul to God thereby. But whatever may be the purpose of this calling, it can only be accepted and can only achieve its purpose when it is accompanied by good deeds. Work and divine help. It is obvious that remembrance means calling upon God. Now it is important to see with what purpose the remembering mu'min-i-zakir, calls upon God. If he is calling upon him for some kind of help, then the divine law, qanun-i-qudrat, of necessity, advises that first you should work according to your abilities and only then ask for help. For it is the principle also from the worldly point of view that a person is helped only when he is unable to accomplish some work despite having used all his ability with the utmost struggle. Work and love of God. If the purpose of zikr is friendship and love of God, then nonetheless it is not possible without good deeds. For the friendship and love of the friend is possible only if his order is put into practice. Whatever he orders to be done should be fulfilled, and whatever he prohibits should be refrained from. Thus it is clear that it is necessary to follow all the ordinances, commandments of religion before or while engaging in zikr. Work and for pleasure of God. It is possible that a person remembers God for no purpose and intention other than for the pleasure of God, but he should understand that his pleasure can be achieved only through following his command and order, amro farman. Therefore, both the word and work of a mu'min should be in accordance with the principles of the religion, Aini Deen. Work and worship, ibadat. It is also possible that a simple person may apply himself to the zikr of God and may go into seclusion with it, with the notion that the entire ibadat, worship, lies in engaging in zikr in seclusion. Ibadat, however, is in a sense a form of slavery, and the true slavery of a slave is that in which he performs all the duties in and out of the house, according to the command of his Lord. Similarly, the ibadat of God is realized through both word and work. This example proves that the ibadat or bandagi, slavery of God, comprises all words and deeds pertaining to religion. Work and spiritual progress. It is absolutely true that from the numerous purposes of zikr of God, one special purpose is that of spiritual and moral elevation, which includes every sublime thing. It includes the help and true love of God, and also His pleasure and worship. But here again the question of work or deed arises. For spiritual elevation, which is the supreme work of religion, is not possible without the fulfillment of good deeds. For instance, suppose a person, having separated himself from his family and society, occupies himself for 40 days in zikr of God in a secluded corner. We accept that he would accomplish the achievement of a considerable right of God from among his rights, but the rest would remain on his neck. On the other hand, the rights of the servants of God upon him would have remained the same as before, namely, that he did not accomplish the fulfillment a single right from the numerous rights of the servants of God upon him, such as the rights of his parents upon him, the rights of his wife and children upon him, the rights of his family members upon him, the right of his relatives and neighbors upon him, the rights of orphans, the poor, the needy and the sick, the rights of the living and of his forefathers, the rights of society, community, nation, and country. How then could the spiritual progress or elevation of such a person who has escaped from all these rights of others upon him be possible? Those are rights which God and the Prophet had ordained, and from the fulfillment of which good deeds are set up. This shows not only the importance and benefit of good deeds, but also shows why monasticism is prohibited in Islam. For that much spiritual benefit cannot be achieved in monasticism, which can be achieved in living together in the community. Work is body and word is soul. In this world, human existence is made manifest due to the combination of two things, the body and soul. Otherwise, neither the soul nor the body alone can do anything. Similarly, the pure word stands for the soul of religion, and good deed for its body. Therefore, the faithful servant of God, Banda-i Mu'min, should perform good deeds inasmuch as the spirit of the zikr of God is pure, so that he may be an angel with the achievement of the completion of his angelic existence. The true religion, Deen-i-Haq, is like the body of a very wise, sound and healthy person. In this body of religion, the zikr of God holds the position of the brain, the heart, i.e., the intellect and wisdom. But it is obvious that the protection of the heart depends on the chest, and the protection of the brain depends on the head. Similarly, the chest and the head are also in need of other organs, each of which holds a great importance in its own place. This example shows the fact that just as man's spiritual and physical faculties and external and internal senses are organized and connected with each other, in the same way all the words and works of religion are joined to and connected with each other. Since negligence in any word and work of religion upsets the entire system of religion, therefore, it is necessary to follow every guidance of religion. Nothing in religion is useless. When an intelligent person ponders on the manufacturing system of a ship, a motor car, or a machine, he cannot say that such and such part or such and such thing is useless and superfluous, for he knows that all its small and large parts are necessary in their own place, and that not one of them is unnecessary. The same example is applicable to the holy Summah of the commands of religion, in which whatever minor or major commands there are useful and fruitful, and none of them are considered useless. Therefore, it is imperative to put into practice every commandment of religion. It is clear that nothing in religion is useless. Yet, in order to explain this fact, further, another example of religion can be drawn from a tree. A tree is the sum total of its parts, and its supreme purpose is the fruit. But the fruit is borne on small and tender branches, and they depend upon the big branches, which further depend upon the trunk, and the trunk depends upon the roots. Further, neither the leaves of a tree nor its bark are useless, for if the leaves were plucked from the tree, the fruit would not ripen properly. The bark serves the tree as its garment. In the absence of the leaves and its bark, the tree would dry up due to the cold and the heat. This very case pertains to the tree of religion. Although its fruit, the supreme purpose, is the zikr of God, how can it be possible to grow mature and delicious fruit without bringing up and protecting the entire tree? Whether the purpose of the tree of religion is fruit or flower or shadow, in any case, the protection and care of all its parts is necessary. Example of a boat. If a person complies with either the word and or the work of religion while neglecting the other, then such a person can be likened to an ignorant and inexperienced sailor who, in order to sail his boat to its destination, rows it only with one oar and does not use the other. Consequently, instead of going ahead, the boat continues to move in a circle. The ignorant sailor thinks that the boat is advancing towards the desired destination. From this example, you can estimate how great a mistake and failure there lies in adopting either the word or the work of religion and neglecting the other. Therefore, the wise mu'min is the one who knows the worth and value of both every word and every work of the religion, and complies with them duly, as indeed he should. Chapter 5. Special Conditions of Zikr. Among the matters of religion, Zikr-i-Ilahi is a matter which is common for common people and special for the selected people. It is for this reason that in the preceding chapter, the general conditions of zikr were discussed. Here, we are dealing with the special conditions of zikr, so that every mu'min-i-zakir, remembering mu'min, may have a sound knowledge of the subtleties and intricacies of this magnificent work, for only in the light of knowledge should one work to achieve its goal. Remembrance and permission, zikr or izn. Mu'mins should have the consummate certainty in the established fact that the secret of progress and success in the remembrance of God lies in permission and leave. Otherwise the door of real spiritualism does not open, as is evident from the gnomic teachings of the Holy Quran, that permission is one of the special principles of Islam. As God says, "Only those are believers who believe in God and His Messenger. When they are with Him on the occasion of a gathering, they do not depart until they have asked for His leave. Those who ask for thy leave are those who believe in God and His Messenger. So when they ask for thy leave for some business of theirs, give leave to those of them whom you wilt, and ask God for their forgiveness." Surah 24, Ayat 62. This blessed verse reveals that to take permission from the center of guidance in not only among the characteristics of true believers, but it is a special order to the Prophet to grant permission for special kinds of religious works to those of the believers whom he wishes to. Further, he should ask God for the forgiveness of their sins, so that God may grant them success and barakat, increase in these deeds. It is obvious that this permission pertains to those words and works which are in the circle of the firm religion, Islam, and in complying with them the pleasure of God and the Prophet is invoked. This also reveals that it is not available to all, but is specified only for those mu'mins who believe in the true sense and who obey the Prophet with heart and soul. Thus, there should not be any surprise if this is an allusion to such a magnificent and lofty matter as the zikr-i-ilahi, and certainly it is, for only that zikr can be the source of the satisfaction of the heart, and in which the permission of the Messenger of God and his prayer is granted. Further, what God says in verses on Najwa, seeking secret counsel, Surah 58, Ayat 12 and Ayat 13, in the Quran means that during the time of the Prophet, mu'mins used to ask the Prophet about secret things in private or in whispers. This sheds light on many things. One of these is that in addition to Shariat, there are also the teachings of Tariqat, Haqiqat, and Ma'rifat. Had these not been there, then why there was it necessary to trouble the Prophet in inquiring again after those general instructions and guidance which had already once been placed before all Muslim as the religious law, Qanun-i-Shariat? But the Prophet, in addition to collective teaching, used to impart to mu'mins the teachings of Tariqat, Haqiqat, and Ma'rifat, according to the status of their knowledge and work, and according to their demand. For had this special and individual teaching and guidance not been given to these mu'mins in private, then not only would the spiritual and educational upbringing of some of the intelligent and prepared mu'mins have remained incomplete and imperfect, but also a precious part of the Prophet Muhammad's knowledge and wisdom would have disappeared. Thus it is narrated in reliable exegesis that quite often Imam Ali was receiving instructions pertaining to the special religious sciences from the Prophet through this secrecy. This reveals that those realities and gnosis which Imam Ali received from the Prophet exist even today in this world in the holy lineage of the Imams from the progeny of Muhammad, being transmitted from one to another secretly, Sina Basina, and the special guidance and permission of Zikr-i-Ilahi is one of these secrets. Regarding the contents of the above-mentioned verses pertaining to Najwa, one may think that the secrets of which the companions used to ask the Prophet in private were pertaining to worldly welfare and betterment, for the Prophet was not only the guide for salvation in the hereafter, but had also to guide the Muslims for their worldly welfare and success. Here it can be said that the worldly welfare and success of Muslims cannot be separated from the external and general guidance of religion, for it was a collective and communal problem. Therefore, it cannot be denied that in this secrecy there might have been some secrets of the worldly kinds, but apart from the wisdom, i.e., ta'wil, of the subject matter of Ayati Najwa, its exegesis also shows that it is mostly related to religious matters, and that it alludes particularly to the secrets of the sciences and stages of spiritualism. In this regard, we should also ponder upon this verse filled in wisdom. Remind them, for thou art but a remembrancer, muzakkir. Thus, according to this command, it is necessary for the Prophet, granting some specific people the permission for zikr-i-ilahi, to necessarily remind them practically of those realities and gnosis which were meant to be remembered for. Remind, in Arabic zakir, means to cause to remember and to avail the means of the permission for zikr. Further, it is in accordance with divine justice that this grace of the Prophet should continue from his own time till the time of Qiyamah, resurrection. And this could be possible only if he would have entrusted the guidance and permission of the zikr-i-ilahi to his successor, so that it could not be argued against God and the Prophet that only the people of the period of prophethood were bestowed upon with the favors of God and the Prophet. Further, God says in the chapter on Abraham, "Seest thou not how Allah conneth a similitude, a pure word like a pure tree, its root set firm, its branches reaching into heaven, it brings forth, gives its fruit at all times by the permission of its Lord." So Allah sets forth parables for men in order that they may receive admonition. Surah 14, Ayat 24 to Ayat 25. There are numerous great wisdoms hidden in this blessed verse, and the key of all these wisdoms lies in the word permission, in Arabic, izn. This pure and purified tree, despite that it is ready in every season and at all times to give fruit, can bring it forth only if its Lord permits it to do so. Otherwise, it does not give its fruit to anyone. This shows that either this pure tree has already been given the knowledge of permission and leave by God, or it continues to receive the luminous favor of and guidance from God, in the light of which it understands well as to whom God wants to give this fruit, and to whom he does not wish to give. As has been mentioned in the exegesis of Shi'a Imamiyah, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq was asked about the meaning of the pure tree in the above-mentioned verse. He said that the tree which is mentioned here is such that its root is the Prophet, its trunk is Ali, the commander of the faithful, its branches are the Imams from the progeny of Muhammad and Ali, its fruit is the knowledge of the Imams, and its branches are their faithful followers. Fixation of Ism-i-Azam. This is a well-accepted fact that if God is called upon by any of his names, he hears, and every name is a kind of zikr, which is a source of reward, mujibi thawab. All his names are beautiful and great, but in spite of this fact, the concept of Ism-i-Azam, i.e. the supreme and greatest names, is also entirely true and correct, for the Ism-i-Azam is fixed according to the requirement or the time and place. The stages of spiritualism, manazili ruhaniyat, and any other requirement. Thus, when Adam, according to the command of God, came out of paradise, it was not because at that time he had forgotten all the names of God, but because he did not know certainly which name to remember according to the time and exigency. Thus, for Adam, those names and perfect words, which were exactly in accordance with his condition, were fixed by God, through which his repentance, tawbah, was accepted, i.e., his spiritual and original status was restored. If the conditions of the prophets are duly pondered upon in the light of the Quran, certainly it will come to light that the fixation of Ism-i-Azam to them was in accordance with their different situations. Therefore, it is best known to God, the Prophet, and the holder of divine authority, i.e. the Imam of the time, which name is appropriate for a specific time, and what should be given to a mu'min. A vivid example of this is that if a non-Muslim continues to remember all the names of God for 40 years without confessing the prophecy of the Prophet Muhammad, it is obvious that only through the names of God he will not receive that light which is in the religion of Islam. From this is ascertained the fact that Ism-i-Azam is fixed for every person separately. Thus, had that non-Muslim who remembered all the names of God but nonetheless received nothing, known that in the final religion of God the Ism-i-Azam which he should adopt is itself the virtuous personality of the Prophet Muhammad, then he would have received everything. Zikr and intention. In Islam, no word or work is correct without the sincerity of intention. Therefore, one of the special conditions of the Zikr-i-Ilahi is the purity of intention, which is to remember God with the intention of spiritual elevation and proximity and nearness of God, and particularly of obtaining His pleasure. Contrariwise, if one does zikr-o-ibadat for any worldly purpose, he will have no success in it, and even if he does have some success, he will derive no satisfactory benefit from it, whether in religion or in the next world. Zikr and dogma, aqidah. Dogma, aqidah, is the basis, foundation, and preliminary form of faith and certitude, imanu iqan, and for some mu'mins is itself faith, iman. Therefore, it is extremely necessary and essential that the zakir should be firm in his belief in religion, for the one whose belief and dogma is weak can never achieve any success in zikr. The one whose belief is not strong becomes a kind of atheist, and only those whose belief is strong can effect every kind of progress in religion. Zikr and purity, taharat. The Holy Quran, in numerous verses, has emphasized external and internal cleanliness and purity. In one verse it is said, "Truly Allah loves those who turn unto Him and loves those who have a care for cleanliness." Surah 2, Ayat 222. Here first is mentioned repentance, tawbah, i.e., turning unto God, and then purity, taharat, the wisdom of which is that without a decisive repentance of sins, the purity of the heart is not possible, nor can mere and sheer external purity and cleanliness help. Therefore, it is obligatory upon the mu'mins to adopt the habit of always living in the state of both external and internal, physical and spiritual cleanliness. Zikr and rising at night. The wise Quran has highly praised rising at night, i.e., zikr-o-ibadat at night. It is clearly revealed in the wise and impressive way through which rising at night has been induced in the chapter Muzammil, the Enshrouded One, that owing to the habituation of zikr-o-ibadat at night, the carnal soul becomes subdued and is trampled upon, and consequently, not only does the chain of zikr remains continuous, but more and more stability and equanimity is obtained by the human intellect, the understanding, and in one's mode of expression. Zikr and Giriya-uzari, weeping and crying. Technically, Giriya-uzari means the weeping and crying of a mu'min in the presence of God, demonstration of humility with remorse for one's venial and mortal sins, and begging for pardon and forgiveness and guidance and mercy from the divine court, Bargah-e constantly. This mode of Giriya-uzari is not only the correct practical form of repenting from all kinds of sin, but also the basis and foundation of righteousness, taqwa, and humility, tawadu, and the best control, saddibab, of pride and arrogance. If one is not able to observe immediately the moral and religious values of Giriya-uzari in the light of Quranic and spiritual wisdom, then he should assess it for its reformative efficacy in the light of serious philosophical and psychological literature, or at least should himself experiment with practicing it and observe its results. It is a different question if a mu'min, despite struggling in Giriya-uzari, cannot do it when it is necessary. In such a case, he should feel vehemently, because he is suffering from the spiritual disease of callousness, kasawati qalbi, which is the disease indicating excessive hard-heartedness and absence of fear of God. The one who is suffering from callousness can neither progress in spiritualism nor be called a darwish. The absence and tenderness and mildness and burning and melting from the heart of a mu'min while listening to religious knowledge during ibadat or riyazat and during hidden and open zikr is never due to bad luck. Rather, it is a result of his own sins. Therefore, it has become necessary for him that, checking all his words and works, habits and manners minutely, he should repent for all venial and mortal sins and should correct and reform every bad habit. Now let us deliberate how the practical state and reality of Giriya-uzari sets up a great reformative revolution in the heart and mind of man, and how every intention, word, and work of man becomes rectified through control of its efficacy. We should know that when man comes into existence in this world, his heart and mind stick to the original and natural state strictly so long as he lives a life of infancy and innocence. As the Prophet says, every baby is born according to the nature of natural religion, Islam. But later on, as he grows up gradually, then partly because of the wrong impressions of others and partly because of his carnal desires, his original state is gradually concealed under a cover, and ultimately the heart and mind of man are concealed under numerous covers of rust and turbidness. Now there is no remedy for this, except that he should repent for his sins in Giriya-uzari and yearn for the Didar-i-Ilahi, divine vision, so that the covers will be removed gradually, and the original and natural cleanliness and splendor and brilliance of the mirror of heart will appear. When a mu'min servant is doing Giriya-uzari in the presence of God, repenting or yearning for luminous vision, Nurani Didar, with absorption and eagerness, and is praying imploringly, then the divine mercy embraces him, and by doing this every day, his heart and soul become purified, and he progresses spiritually. It is worthy of thinking and understanding that were it not for the soul to be dirty, rusty, and filthy, God would never have said, "Truly he succeeds that purifies it, the soul, and he fails that corrupts it." Surah 91, Ayat 9 to Ayat 10. The wisdom of this blessed verse, through its meaningful example, rouses a mu'min's sense of the honor towards his faith, ghayrati imani, that his soul is buried under the heap of sins. Therefore, it should be taken out as soon as possible and cleansed. This most difficult work can be accomplished only through Giriyauzari, repentance and humility and zikr ibadat. Any intelligent person who understands that in reality he has still not matured in the path of spiritualism, but is only a suckling babe, then he should continue doing Giriyauzari for his spiritual upbringing and inner growth and development, so that the nurse of divine light may have mercy upon him and start miraculously upbringing and fostering him. When those true mu'mins who are progressing in spiritualism apply themselves in meditation upon the luminous ibadat, nurani ibadat, late at night, after having taken part in Giriyauzari and prayers in the form of munajat, supplication to God, mankabat, eulogy of the Prophet and Imams, and ginan, then thereby their holy zikr becomes luminous and miraculous, and the ocean of true love rises in waves in their hearts. In following this successful principle, every day manifests a new lustrous spring in their garden of spiritualism. It is doubtless that Giriyauzari contains within itself not only the meaning of repenting for mistakes and sins, and of seeking forgiveness, but therein lies also the passionate and acceptable prayer for the progress and firmness of faith and certainty and protection from future dangers and calamities. The Quran has prohibited weeping even at the occasions of greatest losses and severest difficulties and calamities, and has ordered man to bear every difficulty and calamity with patience and stability. Contrariwise, the Giriyauzari of the Prophets, Imams, and the first-grade mu'mins, undertaken for the sake of spiritual progress and didar-i ilahi, has highly been praised. Another specific characteristic of the true mu'mins mentioned in the Quran is that when they weep out of the ardor of faith, jazbahi imani, they used to fall in prostration on their chins, i.e., faces. Surah 17, Ayat 109. Certainly, this is the extreme limit of humility according to God, and consequently, the Lord of the world showers His infinite mercies and blessings upon them. Another wisdom of Giriyauzari is that when man is yet a suckling babe, he cannot utter anything. That is to say that he is apparently mute and speechless, but in fact he is not so. For man, despite being a baby, infant, is the cream of creation, Ashraf al-Makhluqat. Therefore, the Lord of the world endows the child with the faculty and capacity of weeping so that he could weep if he needed anything. And this same weeping of the child implies the asking for something, whatever it may be, which the kind mother discerns easily, thus looking after him and bringing him with all available means. In short, Owing to Giryalzari, in the presence of the Lord of the universe, carnal desires and false notions are obliterated altogether for the time being. The essence of zikr ibadat shines, and through the persistent practice of this, the mu'min benefits to his entire satisfaction. Zikr and prayers, dua. In connection with the subject of zikr, it seems pertinent to mention some basic and essential points about prayer, such as what is importance and benefit of prayer, which times and occasions are appropriate for it, what should be its procedure, etc. Thus, it should be understood that prayer is one of the most valuable capacities of a mu'min and is indeed his best faculty. This is not common to all human beings, but applies particularly to mu'mins. The study of the Quranic verses pertaining to the prayer shows that prayer is very essential for the people of faith, and they benefit from it at all times and on all occasions, particularly when they are confronted with hardship and difficult tasks. At the beginning of every work, one should pray in the presence of God with Giryalzari, humility, and indigence, for the prayer of a true mu'min is not in vain. It is certain that sooner or later the mu'min will achieve the purpose for which he prays. Otherwise, if this purpose is not in favor of the mu'min according to God, then the benefit and fruit of the prayer is achieved in other forms, such as forgiveness of sin, release from carnal desires, good favor, husni tawfiq, liberation from bad habits, eagerness for ibadat, cleanliness of heart, sharpness in understanding and comprehension, forbearance and humility, seriousness in conversation, patience and peace, enthusiasm for knowledge, interest in religion, salvation in hereafter, etc., etc. Thus fortunate are those mu'mins who are used to praying in all their good deeds for the spiritual and unseen help of God. For instance, when they lay themselves down on the bed at night after their business and ibadat-o bandagi, they pray that may God protect and guard them from every evil and calamity during their sleep, and may He avail them to wake up on time to achieve the felicity of the luminous ibadat. When they wake up on time, they thank God with extreme pleasure and happiness, and pray that may their entire day pass in the zikr ilahi and in good deeds. When they prepare for zikr, they engage in munajat, i.e., they converse with God in their own tongue and in their own language, and then they engage in Giryalzari, conceiving on one side the immense mercy and grace of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, and on the other side their extreme spiritual indigence, poverty, pauperism, backwardness, sinfulness, negligence, laziness, ignorance, etc. And in the state of Giryalzari and contrition and self-consuming, Sozu Gudaz, they place the forehead of supplication, Jabini Niyaz, before God, and implore that may He, the Omnipotent, help and support them miraculously. It should be borne in mind that a mu'min can, apart from his personal prayer, benefit from the prayers of others too, such as the prayer of the Prophet, the prayer of the holder of divine authority, i.e., the Imam, and from the individual and collective prayers of other mu'mins. But it is impossible for a mu'min to benefit without the fulfillment of the conditions of prayer, which are that a mu'min should have the attributes of righteousness and faithfulness. In other words, only a practical mu'min can benefit from all aspects of prayer. Or, in short, in order to benefit from all kinds of prayer, there is one condition, and that is obedience to God, the Prophet, and the Imam of time, and in the case of disobedience, no prayer can be beneficial. Regarding the consequences of disobedience, let us ponder upon the story of the Prophet Noah in the Quran. He had interceded before God with regards to his disobedient son with a very strong desire. Was not the spirit of prayer, dua, hidden in such a desire, while prayer implies a desire? But despite the fact that Noah was a great prophet, his intercession and prayer was not accepted, for prayer is acceptable only if its conditions are fulfilled. On the other hand, Noah cursed the unbelievers of his time, and they drowned and perished, since the conditions for his curse against these unbelievers had been fulfilled, and thus his curse was effective. To sum up, a prayer, our own or others, can be beneficial only if its conditions are fulfilled. In short, not to use all those numerous capacities and faculties with which God has endowed a mu'min in the most comprehensive way, and to consider others responsible for one's own duty, to form a habit of indolence and slothfulness and laziness and idleness, and to escape from one's entrusted duties, fara'id mansabi, is indicative of great ingratitude and is a great sin. Zikr and diet. Any mu'min who wants to reach to the spiritual treasures of Zikr Ilahi has to be very careful about manners related to it. Among these manners is that he has to see that the things which he eats and drinks are lawful and permissible in accordance with the Muhammadan law. A mu'min never eats unlawful things. He always eats only lawful things, and even in lawful things he is very careful. That is to say, he does not fill his stomach with food, lest laziness, inattentiveness, and sleep gain the upper hand during zikr or ibadat. He must keep this in mind, particularly in the evening, so that he may arise in the night on time for the zikr ilahi, and is able to continue the chain of zikr peacefully. Otherwise, numerous obstacles and obstructions come to pass during the zikr. Zikr and sleep. As it is utterly necessary for a mu'mini zakir engaging in zikr to be cautious and moderate in his eating and drinking habits, so does he have to be careful with regard to sleeping, for, owing to lying down for a long time in the state of sleep, the spirit of faith, iman-e-ruh, becomes very weak, because sleep is a kind of death, in which neither the angelic faculties nor the ruh al-iman can stay. This is why in the Quran, praising mu'mins, it is said, "They are in the habit of sleeping but little of the night." Surah 51, Ayat 17. There is a great divine wisdom even in this short sleep, for to a great extent the heart and the mind of man becomes estranged from worldly ideas and thoughts of the whole day. At the same time, fatigue and tiredness are removed, and the temperament becomes fresh. Therefore, one should sleep for some time peacefully, lying down, and if there is no compulsion to engage in any special work, one should sleep on time at night, and should wake up at the fixed time without any delay. But it is a different matter if occasionally the assembly of zikr ibadat continues from evening until morning, which is alluded to in the Quran in verse Surah 76, Ayat 26. If it was asked that, is it not better that a mu'min, instead of getting up late at night, i.e. very early before dawn, and praying, should perform the same amount of ibadat before going to bed and then wake up later in the morning? The answer to this is that such is not correct for several reasons. First, God does not command so. Secondly, as mentioned above, by sleeping all night long, the spirit of the mu'min becomes weak. Thirdly, the ibadat engaged in after sleeping for a while is far better than that which is conducted during the evening, since during sleep a great part of the worldly notions and thoughts occupying the mu'min during the whole day are erased from his heart and mind. It is for this reason that in the chapter Muzammil 73, the mu'min is commanded to sleep for a while and then to get up for bandagi. And this is why seeking forgiveness in the early hours of dawn is regarded as the sign of righteousness. Surah 51, Ayat 18. Zikr and knowledge. Zikr is like traveling, and knowledge and guidance are like light and sight. Thus, if in accordance with the command of travel therein, one wants to travel in the spiritual world of his own self, walking through it with zikr, then he needs not only the eye of religious guidance, but also the light of ilm al-yaqeen, knowledge of certitude. For when a person wants to travel through a country, then he can travel easily and pleasantly only if it is light, without which he cannot walk, in darkness, and even if he walks in the darkness to some extent, he can neither enjoy the natural scenes on the way, nor can he derive as much happiness from such a journey as he would in the light, nor can he perceive the signs of his destination, nor can he acquire any experiences and information from such a journey. Further, it is necessary to know the reality that the perfect certitude, yaqeen-e-kamil, which is the highest ma'rifat, gnosis, is in 3 stages. The first is the stage of ilm al-yaqeen, the second of ayn al-yaqeen, and the highest is the stage of haqq al-yaqeen. This proves that it is not possible to reach ayn al-yaqeen without reaching ilm al-yaqeen, which is the place of spiritual observations. Again, it is impossible to reach haqq al-yaqeen without reaching the stage of ayn al-yaqeen. Thus it is evident that without special guidance and religious knowledge, there can be no progress in zikr. Zikr and time. In the Holy Quran, it has been ordered in various verses to remember God abundantly. That is to say, that at all times of the day and night, God should be remembered and worshipped as much as possible. On the other hand, night time is more appropriate and more suitable for zikr. Surah 73, Ayat 6. And the reason for this has also been explained. That by day there is prolonged occupation with ordinary duties. Surah 73, Ayat 7. By pondering on both holy verses, we come to the conclusion that what God says to remember Him abundantly, day and night, implies zikri kathir, the abundant remembrance, which is easy and general, and that what He emphatically orders to remember Him in the early hours of the morning implies zikri khafi, the hidden remembrance, and the zikr qalbi, remembrance with heart, which is difficult and special. But when it is said to the Prophet that, "Lo, thou hast by day a chain of business," Surah 73, Ayat 7. This never means that the Prophet had no time during the day for zikr or ibadat, for he himself was the embodiment of zikr, i.e., Nurani zikr, the luminous remembrance, was remembering itself in his forehead. Rather, this verse, by this allusion, means that the zikr conducted during the day is considered as the zikr general remembrance, and zikr at night as the zikr khas, special remembrance, so that the mu'mins who belong to different walks of life remember God easily according to their capacity and simultaneously perform their duties at the special time of the night, and they should engage in the special zikr with peace of mind and full attention. Further, the general ibadat conducted during the day should strengthen and back up the special ibadat at night, in order to establish a center of zikr or ibadat which the mu'mins should continue to look after for spiritual and luminous results. A noble and righteous merchant is busy at his business. His business is flourishing. There is a big crowd of customers in his shop, and a respected friend is sitting beside him. The merchant is conversing peacefully and gently sometimes with his friend and sometimes with the customers. When he turns his attention to a customer or to something else, his friend does not feel anger or pain that he discontinued the conversation with him and distracted his attention from him. For they have mutually deep friendship and profound confidence in each other. Therefore, the respected friend is happy that the entire work of his friend is perfect and his shop is thriving with business. This is an example of the fact that a true mu'min, along with his worldly business, can remember God with any name, and if such a general remembrance discontinues, it does not matter. Zikr and occasion. A true mu'min should also know that in addition to fixed, special, and general times, sometimes there are special occasions wherein it is important to increase the zikr further. Thus, when God wants to try a mu'min servant, causing him to suffer in a calamity, then the wise mu'min is availed with a special opportunity which he should not lose. For according to Quranic guidance, there are three things hidden in every calamity, which are benediction, mercy, and guidance from God, and which are available to those patients who say, "Lo, we belong to God, and to Him we are returning." Surah 2, Ayat 155 to 157. It is known to everyone that the most powerful and cunning enemy of religion is his own carnal soul, which continues to create numerous obstacles in every good deed, particularly in zikr or ibadat, and which never tires from hostility, enmity, and evil, attempts at which it mostly succeeds. But there are certain special occasions during which a mu'min may easily subjugate his carnal soul. These occasions are the occasions of calamities and afflictions, in which the carnal soul becomes despondent and helpless and remains behind. Thus, on such occasions, subjugating and trampling upon the carnal soul through zikr or ibadat, one may cause zikr to reach a further stage. Another golden occasion for the defeat of the carnal soul is that listening to conversation about the true knowledge and divine love, in which the mu'min's ruh al-iman and intellect become happy, delighted, and powerful. Because of this, the carnal soul's control is weakened, and it becomes slow. On such an occasion, by continuing zikr for some time, success can be achieved. Chapter 6. The Method or Procedure of Zikr. It is certain that nothing, whether it is religious or worldly, external or internal, exoteric or esoteric, spiritual or internal, or mental or physical, can be accomplished without a method or procedure. Therefore, in this chapter, essential points and useful information are being provided about zikr so that they may help the zakirin, rememberers. Regularity in zikr. It is in accordance with natural law that in order to achieve an object, hardship and toil should be endured regularly. Thus, regarding zikr, the main and correct exercise is the regular performance of zikr. There should be a restriction of time, and it should be done at fixed times without escaping from any difficulty. As God says, "And those who strive in us, we surely guide them to our paths, and verily God is with those who do right." Surah 29, Ayat 69. It is known to all that the path of God, the true religion, Deen-i-Haq, is only one. Thus in the verse mentioned here, that "we surely guide them to our paths," means that although the path of God is one, it has different forms such as faith, certitude, righteousness, fear of God, knowledge, deeds, sincerity, justice, favor, humility, love, obedience, patience, thanksgiving, worship, submission, contentment, etc. All these attributes of righteousness and faithfulness are such that each of them represents some form of the right path, because all of these are mutually connected and joined, and in the depth of spiritualism, all these are as one reality. It is for this reason that in different subjects of the Quran, the excellence of each of these attributes of faithfulness has been described in such a way as to make that particular attribute everything. This is true, and there is great wisdom in this, for internally all other attributes are also attached to it. This means that when a mu'min is accustomed to performing zikr and spiritual exercises with devotion, then God, through His infinite mercy, will grant him all the attributes of faithfulness, mu'mini, and will be revealed to him the spiritualism and luminousness, ruhaniyat or nuraniyat, of all those attributes. This is the meaning of God showing His paths. Internal senses, hawasi batini. In the chapter The Cow in the Quran, censuring ingratitude and rejection and their consequences, it is said, "They are deaf, dumb, and blind, and they do not return to their origin." Surah 2, Ayat 18. Also in the same chapter, it is said about infidels, "They are deaf, dumb, and blind, and they have no reason," i.e. internal senses. Surah 2, Ayat 171. Thus this command of God, in which the fate of the infidels is viewed with despondency by the internal senses, there is also the indication of hope for divine mercy for the believers, and attention has been directed in this commandment to the distinction between the believers and the unbelievers. That is to say, that they can perform zikr ibadat with the tongue of the heart, they can listen to guidance with the ear of their hearts, and they can observe the divine wonders with the eyes of the heart, the purpose of which is to acquire intelligence and understanding and knowledge and wisdom, the purpose of which is in turn to return towards God. The ears of the heart. It is necessary to recognize the ears of the heart in the preliminary stage, so a novice zakir should remain sitting calmly for some time in a place where there is no voice at all. Directing his attention towards the heart and the mind, he should then try not to say anything in his heart, in addition to remaining silent with his tongue. Thus, when he is silent internally and externally, then all of a sudden, unconsciously, dispersed thoughts will begin to occur in his mind. These are the insinuations of the carnal soul, which are also called hadith-i nafsi. To hear these things is not only a proof of the existence of the ears of the heart, but also indicates that just as the voice of evil occurs in the heart, so in the same way the voice of good can also occur therein. Although the voice of the carnal soul is next to nothing, despite that it nonetheless interferes in this experiment of silence, which the ears of the heart heard in a state of extreme calm. These same insinuations of the carnal soul continue to obstruct during zikr ibadat, at the hearing of which the mu'min feels greatly perplexed and anxious. But he should not be disappointed, for after advancing further ahead, the conversations of the intellect and of love can also be heard in the same way. The tongue of the heart. Before starting any exercise of zikr qalbi, it is essential to be aware of the tongue of the heart and its voice, and unless this is done, it is extremely difficult to perform zikr ilahi with the heart. Thus, one way of understanding the state and reality of the voice of the heart, or the conscious, is that the novice should continue to recite a small chapter or a verse of the Quran or any of the names of God in the heart for some time, holding his external tongue. Simultaneously, he should continue listening to the voice of the tongue of the heart with the ear of the heart, and he will ascertain that whatever he was reciting in this experiment was not by the external tongue, but rather by the internal tongue. That is to say, this was the voice of the tongue of the heart, which he was hearing through the ears of the heart. This means there is a tongue in the heart also, which is different from the external tongue, and therewith the zikr qalbi is performed. The eye of the heart. In connection with spiritual progress, it is also necessary to search for and experience the existence of the eye of the heart, for in the case of the absence of the recognition of internal senses, the state of the denial of spiritualism begins to take root, let alone its progress. Thus, the search for and experience of the eye of the heart should be made by the beginner zakir by sitting on the special seat of zikr, free from care and thoughts, and for some time closing his eyes, and then directing his attention towards the world of imagination, alami khayal, i.e., his inner world. He should then choose 5 of the names of God and conceive the writing of each one, that is to say, that he should see the written forms of these names and read them. If he is illiterate, then he should conceive that somebody is reading the Holy Quran in front of him, and he should try to see who that person is, what his clothes are like. Further, he should conceive some other people and see whether the face which he wants to see comes in front of him, or he should conceive some fruits or flowers, and so on. There is no doubt that he will be able to conceive many things in this way. This is to say that whatever he wants, he will be able to bring it into his imagination and observe it spiritually. But in the beginning, the spiritual light and sight of the heart, or insight, will be very dim, rather next to nothing. Anyhow, from this it can be estimated that this is the preliminary form of seeing with the eye of heart, and which on the one hand proves the existence of the eye of the heart, and on the other hand gives evidence of the world of spiritualism. Zikr and fear of God. If there is the fear of God in the heart of a believing zakir, mu'mini zakir, then the zikr becomes very easy. It should be known that the fear of God is artificial as well as real. Artificial fear is that the zakir, according to his understanding, should create an artificial fear of God, which is useful to some extent, but is not lasting. The real fear of God is taqwa, i.e., the righteousness. If the zakir is righteous, then the state of the miraculous fear of God will be spread over him from the beginning of zikri ilahi. Then the question of the occurrence of numerous thoughts and of recurring discontinuity in the chain of zikr will be resolved, for the divine aid and help, ta'id or nusrat, is hidden in the form of the true fear of God, by virtue of which the chain of zikr continues smoothly and thoroughly in the grip of the tongue and the ear of the heart. When the mu'min obeys God in every thought, imagination, word, and action, and fears from disobedience, then necessarily, during the zikr too, profiting from the state of fearing God, he can easily advance the chain of zikr safely and soundly. As the Quran says, Allah has revealed the best word in the form of a book, equivocal and repeated. From its remembrance doth creep the skins of those who fear their Lord. Then their skins and their hearts do soften to Allah's zikr. Surah 39, Ayat 23. If this best word is the Quran on one hand, on the other hand, it is the Ismi Azam. Since Ismi Azam is the spiritualism and luminousness of the Quran itself, and since it holds various realities and gnosis, therefore it is equivocal, mutashabah. Further, since it is repeated in zikr, therefore it is called repeated, mathani. The reason why only the skins of righteous people creep from its zikr is that those billions cellular souls which are sleeping in their bodies have this capacity to wake up all of a sudden from the voice of zikri ilahi, which is commonly called the creeps. But those who are not righteous, no such state occurs to them. However, their skins do creep from worldly and material fear, certainly. It is clear that the potentiality of zikr is actualized due to righteousness and the fear of God, for by virtue of this, the zikr attached to the tongue of the heart keeps on moving smoothly, and in the ear of the heart its echo is felt as being very melodious. For the true meaning of the fear of God means to remain always pure from the impurity of sins, and in the case of remaining pure, the miracle of the fear of God continues to guide. Zikr and hope. One faculty, power of faith of a believing zakir, mu'min zakir, is hidden in that he should hope for divine mercy and should not be disappointed, for despondency regarding the mercy of God is blasphemy. For as there is betterment and virtue for the people of faith in the fear of God, so there is their well-being and success in the hope of His mercy. Thus various Quranic verses imply that a faithful servant of God should have hope and yearning in his heart for divine mercy, and he should consistently work hard. Zikr and humility. To create the state and attribute of humility in himself, not only before and after zikr, but forever, is the greatest wisdom of Mu'min Zakir. For humility is the preliminary form of real love and its prelude. Only in humility is there a guarantee of escaping from pride, without which divine help, guidance, and mercy do not even come close. Therefore, it is necessary that the Zakir should adopt seriousness and humility to the extreme, so that there may be created miraculous attraction and appeal in the voice of zikr and light before the spiritual eye, didah batin. It has always been a condition of the natural, divine law that it nullifies that person who considers himself something, and aggrandizes that person who considers himself nothing. Thus the Banda-i Zakir should know that the secret of his success lies in humility and submission. Zikr and love. It is only divine love which is that stage of spiritualism in which the Mu'min Zakir rids himself of the numerous insinuations and false thoughts of the carnal soul, as indeed he ought, for divine love is such a fire which abounds in wisdom and which burns out all thoughts and notions except zikr ilahi. True love is the original and practical form of the divine love itself, in which the true lover becomes the embodiment of zikr from the top to the bottom. Why not, since love is a kind of extremely sweet pain of the heart, and the suffering of the entire body in any pain of the heart is but natural. For love is called that state of the heart and the mind in which zikr of the beloved and yearning for union is on the level of perfection. And it is obvious that it is that heart and the mind which govern and rule on the external and internal planes of the body. In short, at the stage of divine love, in addition to the soul, the body also participates in a way. It may be asked how love, which is just a state of mind and heart, can affect, compel, and subjugate the entire body. The answer is that the anger of a man is also a mental state, but man flies into a passion because of it and starts shivering. Similarly, when he is suffering from the extreme feeling of shame among the people, all of a sudden his face becomes pale with shame, and owing to shame he trembles and perspires, dripping with sweat. If the man is happy, then his face glitters from happiness, and if he is sad, he shrinks, being dejected. All these are nothing but states of the mind and the heart, but the main point is, as we mentioned above, that the entire body of man is ruled or governed by the heart and the mind. In other words, the human body is under the influence of the animal soul, the animal soul under that of the rational soul, and the rational under that of the intellect. This proves that the conscious state which occurs within the heart and the mind of man sends its waves, currents, through the entire body. Thus, at the stage of love, the way the state of the body of the lower Zakir changes by virtue of realization, consciousness of divine love, and the way the lover becomes the embodiment of zikr from the top to the bottom, is a reality. Thus Banda-i Mu'min should, in all the difficulties of zikr, have recourse to true love, its permanent method is that the true love, ishq-e hakiki, should be given paramount importance among the manners and conditions of zikr-i-ilahi, and among all attributes of righteousness and faithfulness. Zikr and attention. Regarding attention towards zikr, we have already explained some important points before this, yet some more points are going to be explained here. As mentioned earlier, there are three special faculties, powers of the heart: ear, tongue, and eye. And without these three powers of the heart, it is difficult to give complete attention towards zikr. Thus, by placing the tongue of the heart under pressure, one should continue zikr, and by making the ear of the heart attentive, one should listen to zikr, and compel the eye of the heart to continue looking at the spiritual writing of zikr, and the eye should not neglect this duty even for a second. This is paying perfect attention towards zikr. Now one should create more and more the state of humility in one's heart through the exercise of willpower. That is to say, that in one's heart of hearts, one must weep and pray before God that His spiritual help may embrace one, so that the attention of the three powers may stand firm towards zikr, and that the clouds of negligence and oblivion may disperse. Thus one remains hopeful and does not become disappointed, for success is achieved due to the continual exercise of this practice. Speed of zikr. Here a very important question arises about the speed of zikr. What should be the speed of the zikr of heart? Can it be estimated? This is an important question which no wise zakir can afford to neglect. It should be understood that according to an allusion in the chapter Luqman, the speed of the zikr should be of moderate type, i.e., neither very fast nor very slow, as that of a traveler walking to a destination with a moderate speed. But, verily, when the traveler is facing a danger in the way, such as the possibility of dacoity, rain, the falling of stones from mountains, being chased by a powerful enemy, or if the darkness of night is close, then he must necessarily increase his walking speed. The same is the condition of a traveler along the path of spiritualism. If the chain of zikr discontinues, or if thoughts of various types occur, or if there is drowsiness or laziness, or if there is the domination of Satan and of the carnal soul, then he should increase the speed of zikr, pressing down upon the carnal soul through willpower. An estimate of this speed is that if the Ism-i-Azam consists of 4 letters, then in 1 hour it should be repeated approximately 10,000 times. This means that in 3 minutes, 45 seconds, such a name should be repeated approximately 600 times. This is an estimate for a quadliteral word. Chain of zikr. If you want to perform the zikr of the heart at the fixed time with the importance due to it, then it should be consistent and consecutive, linked together, for which the correct pronunciation is very necessary. And correct pronunciation of the word of zikr is possible if it is continually recited within the grip of the tongue of the heart, and is listened to with the ear of the heart. But if the word is not pronounced properly, and is not listened to with total and perfect attention with the ear of the heart, then the chain of zikr becomes discontinuous. For instance, in external speech, the tongue slips only when the grip of the speaker over his attention is loosened. That is to say, that when any of the speaking and hearing powers become lazy, then the slip occurs in speech and in conversation. It is only through the hearing faculty that one may detect whether there occurred a slip of speech or not, or whether such and such words were pronounced properly or not. Thus it is the duty of the eye and the ear of the heart to keep the chain of zikr continuous and to protect, guard it from the slips of forgetting it from moment to moment. That is to say, that the tongue should pronounce each link, i.e., word of the chain of zikr, clearly, and the ear should listen to it with great attention. In fact, attention should be paid to it even with the eye of the heart, so that there should not be any discontinuity in the chain of zikr ilahi. If a mu'min's chain of zikr of the heart discontinues again and again, despite the efforts made, then the reason for this is either a sin has been committed or ignorance. Therefore, he should cure both diseases. That is to say, along with repentance and righteousness, he should also obtain the necessary knowledge pertaining to zikr, so that he will succeed in making his zikr consistent and consecutive. Zikr and effacement. When the real mu'min starts performing zikr after accomplishing all related manners, then the state of unrelatedness, la ta'alluqi ki kayfiyat, occurs in his mind. That is neither the state of dream nor that of wakefulness, which is also called bekhudi, selflessness. In this state, everything, external as well internal, is effaced from the mind and consciousness of the zakir, except zikr, which remains and continues. In this state, the mu'mini zakir also forgets himself altogether. He does not even know where he sits, nor which place it is, whether it is home or not. He does not feel whether his body exists or not, or whether it is lost. If such a state pervades through the beginner, then he should be sure that he is progressing in spiritualism. If not so, then it should be understood that this failure is because of his own deficiencies and mistakes, and not for any other reason.